Welcome to the Mike and Alison After Hours podcast with your hosts, Mike Sheila and Alison Haas, talking business with real business owners in the Mid-Atlantic region. Today's episode is sponsored by Advantage Industries. When you need business technology, get Advantage Industries to protect and promote your business. To learn more, go to www.getadvantage.com and schedule your first meeting to see if you qualify for a free network scan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mike and Alison After Hours. I am your host, Mike Sheila, and with me today is my co-host, the always visualizing and often vocal Alison Haas. Alison, how the heck are you today?
These adjectives. I got to up my game here, Mike. And I was just thinking we need to do Alison and Mike before hours, right? Because technically we record early. So the after hours, I guess that's better for our audience. But anyway, top of the morning to you.
Yeah, top of the morning, indeed. And some of our audience knows why we chose the after hours statement. It goes back to the origin of our show and some rights that we had to say certain things and not say certain things. So we decided to call it Mike and Alison After Hours. But we are very excited to have a government contracting expert on today. You all know that Alison loves government contractors. I love government contractors. We have a fellow government contractor lover on today, Judy Bradt, who is the CEO of Summit Insight LLC. Judy and I have known each other for many, many years. I was doing a webinar with her about 5 years ago as well, speaking to her audience as well. And it was high time that I returned the favor. So Judy, welcome to the Mike and Alison After Hours show. We're so excited to have you today.
Mike, Alison, thanks for the call back. It's great to see you both.
You too.
Wonderful, wonderful. So folks, you may remember that we have a giveaway right now. A few months back, we had Gloria Larkin on the show. She wrote a book, and we are giving away said book. Alison, why don't you tell us just a minute or two about it? Because I know you read it and you loved it.
Yes. And I have it here finally prepared. And what I love, again, I've shared in the past, of course, it's geared toward government contractors, but anyone just starting a business, I think the beginning part of the book is perfect if you're just getting your feet wet and writing a business plan, right? It sounds so simple because it is, but I think so many people skip that step and they just get excited and they say, I got to go to the bank and I got to get a website and I got to build business cards. I'm saying this from experience, but putting things down on paper in outline form and then having others weigh in and take a look, I think is instrumental. So she talks in depth about a business plan outline and what that looks like. And I think she wrote it perfectly. It expresses your commitment to the success of your business, right? Putting things on paper. So definitely recommend it. Thank you, Mike, for letting me read a little bit.
Awesome. So Judy, today, what we're going to do is Alison's going to take you through the who, what, where, when, how segment of the show, which gives you the opportunity to talk about your company and who you serve and how you serve. I know you have a particular passion for helping government contractors from a sales perspective, which I absolutely love, and maybe that'll come out in the conversation. Alison's always interesting and engaging when she gets into that piece of the project. You have a little book nerd thing. You're going to talk about one of your favorite books with us. And then when Alison hands me back to you, you and I are going to talk a little bit about leadership and specifically about the government contracting industry and how it's impacting the world right now. So with that, Alison, take it away.
Thank you, sir. Judy, I'm so grateful to get to know you this morning. So I'm a few years behind Mike, but this will be an awesome conversation. So thank you for joining us this morning. So this part is yours to steer in any way that you'd like. It can be a blend of personal, all professional, but we want the audience to learn more about Judy and what you want them to know about her. So if you would, give us a tour. Who's Judy and who is Summit Insight and what do those do together?
Well, thanks again, Alison. My core value has emerged over the years, and I've realized that it is all around human connection. I happen to be in the professional space in the federal contracting arena. And so that's where I do my work. And so I live and work at the nexus, the crossover, the intersection of GovCon and human connection. that getting to that place, as I started as wanting to be a consultant and just help people offer expertise in the field that I became involved in federal contracting. And I avoided for 25 years everything to do with sales. In fact, when I got out of graduate school, I was wanting to be involved. This was 1984, and the computing industry was just coming out of the lab, off of the slab in Boca Raton, and personal computing was changing the face of computing forever. And IBM Canada was hiring new business grads hand over fist. And I thought, I want to be a strategist. IBM Canada said, great, welcome in. And it took me 6 months to realize I was working for, at the time, the planet's largest sales organization. I was so horrified, I literally left the country. I applied for a job at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. And there, I was going to be a consultant. I was going to help Canadian companies under the newly signed Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement sell to the U.S. federal government. And over 15 years, I became Canada's top expert in helping Canadian companies sell to the American federal government, often in partnerships with American companies. And I hit the point in 2003 that I wanted to do more than I could where I was. And I left the Canadian Embassy, hardest job that I ever departed, because I loved serving my then country, and became an American citizen as part of all of that, and started to work more with American companies as well. And so I started my company in 2003. I never imagined becoming a business owner. In fact, all the courage and smarts and determination of the business owners I had worked with, thousands of business owners, and that I had met on both sides of the border in the first 15 years between 1988 and 2003, intimidated me. I thought, I can never do this. And so many of the stories of business owners that I heard about were, so-and-so is abandoned by their family with 3 children in the snow in the middle of Christmas, and had started a business from nothing. I went, I don't have this kind of origin story. I can't start a business. I don't have that kind of, that's not my story. And it turned out that I wasn't going to I didn't want to work for another large organization. So I just started out, but I wasn't done with the expertise that I had in government contracting. So I walked the plank and went out to start a business, which kind of comes to one of the questions that you were talking about. What exactly is it that, that entrepreneurs should keep in mind? And one of those, Michael Gerber, one of the books that I read early on in starting my business, Michael Gerber's The E-Myth. And he makes, and the book is a couple of decades old, but it asks a really important question. Are you a technician or are you an entrepreneur? Because when you're starting out as a solo business owner, one of the big misunderstandings or shockers, and this is especially true for people who are in government, leave government, say, I can start a business. The amount is in professional services as a solo consultant. So I'm not talking about people who do products or manufacturing. My hat is off to people who do these things, because I can't even imagine doing these things. With professional services, the amount of your time you spend doing non-revenue generating things as a consultant is absolutely staggering. Yes. And so considering, what's your vision for the future? Do you want to build a company? And that's a very different trajectory than I want to be a solo consultant. And even as solo consultants, one of the things I've learned over time is that is also a team enterprise, because none of us, after a while, if you want to grow, none of us does this on our own, and we all have people that we depend on. And so the critical moment that I had in my journey, because you'll remember I fled the concept of sales, and yet everyone who grows a business comes to understand we are all in sales. Yeah. If you haven't already been slammed into hearing somebody say that, then keep listening until you take that into your heart, because from the moment we are born, we are wired to connect with the first creature that we set eyes on in the hope that we can be fed and we can thrive. We are wired as creatures for human connection. If we fail to do that, we're not going to survive. And so that basic primal wiring for human connection is also at the heart of a business thriving. It's at the heart of where trust comes from, because people buy from people they know, and people buy from people they like, and people buy from people they trust. And so that is just as true in the federal arena as it is everywhere else. And after being immersed for 15, 12, for almost 25 years in the minutiae and technical parts of federal contracting, I had ended up in a big project that was going to be the great project for my business. I'd had some smaller projects, but nothing that was really one of those real pivotal, make the business grow projects.
Right.
This one I was working with seven companies for a whole year. And we were going to get the sales plan built, give them the strategy, and then spend 10 months coaching them as they implemented the plan. Things didn't go the way I expected. And that's life. It doesn't. So we got to the big heavy lift with these companies who were doing everything from offering snap lock glass food containers, uninterruptible power supplies, waterless shampoo, city block sized generators, and my favorite, root canal equipment.
Oh, that's quite a list.
That was quite a list.
Sure.
And so we got to the end of creating the sales plan. And I said, great, we're going to see you on Monday, make some sales calls. And they said, well, when are you making the introductions? I said, the what? They said, the introductions. So, no. They said, yes. I said, no. They said, yep. I went, oh boy. Now, at this point, I only had 3 problems. First, I have a graduate degree. I don't make sales calls. Yeah, well, that ship had sailed. Second, I was terrified that everybody would think I was an enormous fraud. I had written a book. I had, for 25 years, I could tell you everything you wanted to know about federal contracting except for one little thing: how somebody actually closed the business. It wasn't I didn't want to tell you. I honestly didn't know. But the third piece was, this was my contract for the whole year. In the words of the immortal Gene Kranz, mission controller at NASA, failure was not an option. So I had to take a deep breath, open up my sales plan, and pick up the phone. And I can tell you that nobody ever died from a phone call. Nope. I can also tell you that you can feel like you're going to die from a phone call. And this was somewhere, but it was terrifying. And just day after day, I was on the hook for thousands of calls and hundreds of introductions. And it hit a moment on the phone. I was literally dialing for dollars for endodontics. And I'm calling, and I hit the phone number for the third phone conversation with Dr. Ned Robertson with the Indian Health Service in Penobscot, Maine. And Dr. Ned is talking to me about his nephew who is just admitted to Georgetown Medical School. He was so proud of him. And what he was saying, don't call me on Tuesday. It's my day off. You know what he was doing on his day off? He was sewing curtains. And he said, but set up something for Thursday. Have your folks call my assistant, and I'll talk to that team from B&L Biotech. No problem. He hung up the phone. I went, wait a second. That was
what
it.
Just happened.
That was all I had to do. How do I do that again? And it got a little better. Yeah. And a little better. At the end of that year, I made all my calls. I submitted all my reports. And I thought, I am never doing this again. Wait a second. I cannot be the only person with subject matter expertise who doesn't know how to do this thing, and for whom failure to do this thing, to be able to sell and connect, means none of these people I could help will ever have the benefit of what I can do. I can't be the only person who has this gap in human connection and sales skills. That means without that, we're not going to be successful. We're not going to be able to make the change we want to make in the world to give people the things they need. How can I make that easier? Nobody should spend a year the way I just spent a year. And that in 2014, 2015 led me to completely transform my business and center it around giving people the hands-on skills and understanding of what it takes to grow their federal business by closing that gap between technical expertise and the nuts and bolts of focus, to also apply the skills of human connection to meet the players at all 5 layers, all the people that they really need to be bought in and supporting and cheering for you, for all of us, in order for us to become the one they trust and to engage. That's a long story, and I don't think I stopped to let either of us breathe. So I want to stop and let you.
I was going to jump
ask
in
me
and
where
allow
it goes
you to
from
breathe
there.
anyway. So no, that's a perfect segue, Judy. Thank you. And I think it's important to talk about the stumbling blocks of ending up humble, right? We're humbled through action and experience, right? Not usually because we decide one day that we need to be. But your experience lends itself to opportunity for others, right? So no one should spend a year like I did. Your experience can now benefit others, right? And so that gap, I think, is so important for our audience to hear, because you may know everything, but if you've never actually done it, doesn't really matter, right? And I know for me, professionally, personally, I have a hard time trusting, you said that word, and wanting to work with people who haven't been in my shoes exactly. And because there's just something about being able to share an experience as it is actually experienced, right? I'm having trouble with words this morning. I need more coffee. But that's important, right? So I love that. I love the bridging the gap. And so 2 things, we talked a little bit about it before the show, but being a solopreneur, you still need team members, right? And you said that. So talk to us about who those team members are, what that actually looks like. Because I think people hear I'm a one-man band, therefore it's all on me. I do everything myself. And that's not true, right?
For me, it's absolutely not. Even from the very early days of running my business, I absolutely needed an assistant. Just because you can do a thing doesn't mean you should. And so for me, I absolutely needed help in managing time and back office and contacts and database. And I mean, I can write, but I shouldn't ever be let near editing tools, graphic design tools, or email and contact relationship management systems. The mess I made of sophisticated CRM tools took 2.5 years and more money than I can count to have trained professionals sort out. And so the team, it's figuring out what's my genius zone. There's lots of self-assessments that let you figure out what is your genius zone. And so no matter how many of these assessments that I take, mine come along the lines of teaching, coaching, educating, that things related to advocating for someone else. I can believe in my heart of hearts that yes, someone should speak up for people, but I both shy away from conflict, which is one of the other things that I find really difficult. And I also find it hard to sometimes, my instinct is to say, can't you get to da-da-da-da-da, as opposed to listening and getting people on board. One of my later in life lessons I wish I had learned, and there are many earlier, is that someone isn't ready to listen until they feel heard. This is true in advocacy, but it's true in business. It's true in sales. First validate, then educate. Oh, I'm the big consultant. I know lots of stuff. Yeah, well, so. And when somebody needs you, you learn that they first have to feel comfortable saying, I hurt. I'm incomplete. I need to feel safe telling you that there's something I don't do as well as I wish that I did. And I need to feel like you're not going to judge me for saying, I need help with something. Someone has to feel in it with you. I have struggled with everything to do with sales. I still have at least 2 major sales flops a week when I'm in a conversation and I'm not focused or I'm not listening enough
You're
to the
human.
person I'm in front of. It happens to me all the time. So I want people who are working with me to understand that I continue to have to work at all of these things every day, but I'm where you are.
Yep. Yep, I love that, Judy. And I think that's a great segue, too, before I pass you to Mike to talk more about leadership, about books, right? We talked a little bit about being a book nerd, and Mike and I both read daily, sometimes multiple books at a time, right? So talk to us a little bit about the book you wanted us to learn more of and maybe read ourselves, and what's helped you.
Sure. The book that currently has my attention, I love Brene Brown's work, and her latest book, Atlas of the Heart, I'll show it to you here, is my new current favorite, and I've just finished it. And all of her work ends up being really critical, in part because some of her core work is around trust and the elements of trust, which is critical to teams and leadership. And so in her Dare to Lead work, which is one of the works before Atlas of the Heart, she talks about the elements of trust. Run, do not walk. And pick up that book and look at the Dare to Lead content on her website. One of the things that comes out, she has a podcast called Unlocking Us. And as part of that, when she was talking about her book, she had this marvelous quote from just a second, and I'll get Mandy Haskett. We used to believe that humans were thinking creatures who occasionally felt, but PET scans in the last decade have confirmed that humans are actually feeling creatures who occasionally think. So turns out we are feeling machines. And so we have left brain and right brain wisdom. And the left brain stuff is all survival and fear-based stuff. And it's all kind of when people talk about being in their heads. There's a whole other collection of wisdom. Often we can get really disconnected from the inherent wisdom that's locked in our bodies. There's a reason why they're called feelings. Feelings aren't just sort of head, heart, emotion things. They're also literally feeling sensations. But they're noticing that is a guide to unlocking all kinds of really sophisticated nonlinear processing that not only connects the dots and relates to intuition, but lets us lead and create and communicate out of love. If you have to think about the things that happen, the things we say, the things that we create, we can do those things out of fear, drive out of fear, which can give us some short-term urgency and push, or we can do it out of the pull of love, of things that are longer term. Love is more sustainable in the long run. It gets more people on board. It is something that is not going to erode our physical and mental and emotional resources over time nearly the same way. And I'm skimming the surface of a lot of the pieces on human connection and communication that I've absorbed, especially over the last 5 or 6 years, that have come to rise out of the core of my work in the federal contracting arena.
Excellent. Judy, perfect segue to pass you to Mike. I took most of his time, but I'm going to still pass the baton, and he'll ask how we get in touch with you. But thank you for all of that wisdom in the genius zone. I'm sure Mike is going to talk about that. Thanks.
Well, Alison, you read my mind, because Judy, I was going to say, I am confident that if a government contractor is listening or watching this episode, their thought is, wow, Judy brings some things to the table that I am sorely lacking. I wonder how I get in touch with her. So with that said, please tell our audience the best ways to contact you if they're interested in learning more about how you can help their organization.
Well, connect with me on LinkedIn and say, saw you on Mike and Alison's podcast on After Hours, by all means. Judy.Bradt, B-R-A-D-T, Judy.Bradt at growfedbiz.com. You can also pick up my book, Government Contracts Made Easier. That's because easy is fiction. All right. I've got a book and a workbook. It's an Amazon #1 bestseller. And pick up the book by all means, whether you're new to federal contracting or you're looking to grow. And on my website, you can also book a federal business breakthrough call, which is typically suitable for a company that's been an established business, whether you're new to the federal market or you've been in GovCon and looking to grow. And let's take it from there, see if we're
wonderful.
we're a fit.
Well, Judy, I smell a giveaway. So I'm going to talk to you after the show about giving away some copies of your book.
I would love that. I'm getting ready to move from Northern Virginia to Calvert County. And so I have books I'm very happy to not move and make available to you and your community. I would like that very much.
Awesome. So before we let you go, I want to give you the floor for about 5 minutes because I talk to government contractors on a weekly basis. I know Alison does. I know you do. So I'm curious, what's the vibe? Is there a recurring theme, a question, a concern that your government contracting opportunities are bringing to you that maybe not everybody's aware of, but you could put out to our audience today to give them something to think about?
The thing that I would really love all government contractors to appreciate is that there's no such thing as doing business with the government. I'm going to say that again. There's no such thing as doing business with the government. When you win a contract, you, whether physically or electronically, you're going to sign a document. It's going to be signed by another human being who has everything on the line when they choose you. It's not just professional. They're not just representing an anonymous institution. They have everything at stake when they choose you. When things go well or things go poorly, it affects not just their agency, their office, the mission, but it affects their professional career. It affects their personal security. It affects how they can provide for their families, whether their kids go to a great college, whether they can take their grandkids to Disney. Everything rides on the decision they make to trust you and your company. I mean, trust is choosing to risk to make something you value vulnerable to another person's actions. You think about that. That's what trust means. And so don't be surprised when it takes time and seems to take a lot of effort to get to know someone is because they have so much at stake. Keep showing up, choose carefully, and keep showing up, but get to really know the individual federal humans who are putting everything on the line when they decide to choose you. Respect the fact that it's going to take time, and keep showing up and bringing value, bringing small wins to them. So every time they're in touch with you, they know their life is just a little better because you get them. You're paying attention to what's important to them every single time and get them hooked on that next conversation with you.
I love that.
Judy, that is absolutely exceptional. And I'm sure you and I have talked about this offline at one other point, but I am a huge Dr. Stephen Covey fan in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And you pulled in, I want to say, 4 of his 7 habits in the conversation today, maybe even 5. So well done. Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us on Mike and Alison After Hours today. This has been a fun ride today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Judy.
Alison, Mike, thank you. Keep bringing it and keep making other people's lives better by bringing great guests and inspiring everyone who meets you.
Thank you.
And now I have another book to add to my list. Thank you. Judy, take care. Okay, wow. So many things to unpack. But the first thing I want to say is how gracious is Judy. The grace, the delivery. So to our keen listening audience, I screwed up pronouncing Judy's last name to start the show. Wonderful. But she didn't correct me. When she had the opportunity.
How do you know? How do you know you misspoke?
Because when she had the opportunity to say her last name, she pronounced it correctly. Now that's powerful. And I can go on and on and on, but Alison, I want to get your reaction. What did you hear? What did you love? Because I loved so much of it.
Me too, Mike. I think, it's easier to remember in reverse order, but for the government, and because this reminded me of like when I first started selling, like you're selling to a person, even if they have title of
or a group of people,
they are people. And I think even internally at corporate, like the departments, I'm emailing a person, not the department, right? Like this isn't a robot that's getting my email and then spitting it out a response. So I think the reminder that we are interacting with people. And there's a learning curve with confidence, right? An experience curve. And we all get more comfortable as we gain confidence, which comes only from experience and practicing. But I love that take home message of like, you are dealing with people, because I can forget that too, right? And I forget that people have lives and they have personal affairs and feelings, as she brought up again. And I am absolutely prey to, why won't they get back to me? Blah, blah, blah. Like, isn't Alison all they think about? No, especially if it is the business owner, they got a business to run, you know?
So that's a very important point that I hope our audience takes today, because specifically, if you are a government contractor, you don't get to sell to Bob Smith, the head of XYZ department. 99 out of 100 times, you're responding to an RFP.
Mm-hmm.
That RFP usually has a group of people involved in that decision. The reason, there are many reasons why the government uses the RFP process. They want to the best of their ability, remove the appearance of bias.
Mm-hmm.
And they also want to take out what is perceived as, oh, they just bought from them because they have a long-standing relationship with them. Which means it is 10 times as important that you build those personal relationships. So if there's 5 people involved in the RFP, you damn well better know 4 out of the 5. And they better know you. And I don't mean just, oh, I know that person's name. They got to know you.
Right.
And I think that's, and she said so many wonderful, brilliant things that I love. But that was my takeaway from that. What about you?
Yeah, well, first I think of RFPs and I'm like, ugh, because I think of the automated part of it and that
it's very antiseptic. It's hands off.
Yes. And I don't sell that way, and I can't sell that way. Yep. And because I sell services, right? Human resource services. And that is not a spreadsheetable item. Sure it is, but like there's no depth to that. So I think you just nailed it in building relationships. And, you know, I'm a huge fan of Jeb Blount, right? And he talks about relationships being part of the sales part tactic, right? And the rest of it is really having couth and experience and professionalism and challenging people. But all that is part of the human interaction that Judy was talking about. So, and the book we're giving away, The Basic Guide to Government Contracting, talks a tremendous amount about the RFP process, but also building the relationships with the stakeholders and remembering in what you're presenting, people are reading that. So yes, your grammar matters, the font matters, like all the nuancy things that drive us crazy, the burden, the time, Judy mentioned, the effort. People see that, people recognize that. And I have to say, and I'm pivoting, sorry. But when she said, oh hell, Alison, I just forgot what I said because I distracted myself or what I was going to say.
You're pivoting.
The effort. Oh, thank you. Leaving people wanting more of you for the next time. Small wins in every engagement and every conversation. Give them something. Anything. For me, it could be like the woman I spoke to yesterday morning. Her shirt was amazing. And I doubled down and I told her that in an email later, right? So, you know, like I see you, right? I see the shirt that you're wearing, Mike. It brings out the blue in your eyes, right? I hope you have a
very intentional, by the way.
Yep. Connecting with people on a personal level and validating them as she shared. Yeah, she said a lot. Obviously, I'm all over the place. Squirrel.
Yeah. So I love that you brought up Jeb, because I don't remember which book he references this, but we tend, meaning Advantage Industries, we tend to stay away from RFPs. We don't seek them.
Yeah, me too.
But as luck would have it, over the last 3 months, we've had a handful come in. And I believe it was Jeb that said, there's nothing wrong with RFPs as long as you're allowed to engage the prospective client. And some of them won't. They're like, nope, you respond to the RFP, period, end of story. That's all you get.
Right.
So there are two things that you want to try to accomplish. First, you'd like to be at the front of the RFP to help co-create it. And if that doesn't happen, then you want to get permission to discuss the RFP with the prospective client before you respond. I'll give you a great example. We got an RFP last week for a nonprofit that is looking for exactly what we do. Great. There were a couple of specific problems with the RFP. One, it says we're looking for a company that does cybersecurity and compliance. Okay, great. Which compliance framework are you interested in? You can't just say compliance, because every IT company will tell you we do cybersecurity. Well, no, you don't, actually. And 9 times out of 10, I can pick them apart and tell them, you do some things that are involved in cybersecurity. You don't do cybersecurity.
Interesting.
So that's an important distinction. And if the client hasn't specified it, then it's a challenge. And then they didn't tell us how many employees they have. Like, well, I can't give you a price if I don't know the size and scope of your company. But on the opposite side of that, they got really granular and really specific with how their servers are set up, which I was like, great. But I only need to know like 10% of that to actually quote supporting a server. So sometimes the RFP is written by people that don't actually know what's needed in order to quote. So I'm curious. Yeah, I know you generally tend to stay away from RFPs, but they come across your plate from time to time as well. So, what are your thoughts in that arena?
It's funny because I still have such resistance and repulsion, to be honest, when I hear RFP. Again, because I also need 90% more data than an RFP lists. And so I actually have a client. It's a charter school that I earned last year. They came on as a partner who had the RFP process, but it started with us talking, me and leadership. And they said, okay, we'll have to do the RFP. And I just assumed like, well, that ain't going to happen because we don't do RFPs, but I was able to develop a relationship with the people behind the process. And they said, listen, the school requires us to do it this way. What do you need? I need you, Alison, to email RFP, procurement, blah, 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 say these things, but like, what do you need from us? And so I was still able to build the relationship and be frank. And that's the other piece, right? Just because someone requests something doesn't mean you have to give it. So, and to Jeb's point, right? Like, and yours, maybe it's not the right business. Maybe it's not a match. If you can't engage with the person asking for the RFP, okay, not every business is a match. And I've learned that. Which also comes from experience, right? When you're new and you have no money, you don't care who signs. Everyone needs to sign and you'll do whatever it takes. But at this point in my career, I have a little bit more patience and poise and I say, okay, like, that's not how we do business, right? Kindly, of course, and tactfully. But yeah, I think the relationship piece still is paramount because too, like I'm dealing with humans, literally, like human resource services. So I can't just send an RFP request in or out or whatever the hell the terminology is, and show them the value in what we're doing that way.
Yep.
Did I answer you?
You did. And, the world of sales is mysterious and vague. Not quite as mysterious and vague as marketing.
Yeah.
But it's mysterious and vague. And here's why. And I forget who said this to me, but they just said it to me yesterday that there are many aspects of business that are very trackable and programmable. Manufacturing company. They build the device that's going to manufacture the widget. They maintain the device. and they know they can get X number of widgets out of it. And over time, you create efficiencies with that machine. So the machine can produce more for less. And that is a big piece of what the world is built on. That's not sales. Because you can take, like, great example. You and I switched jobs today. Alison, you're now selling IT. Mike, you're now selling HR. Would we both figure it out with enough time? Absolutely. Why? Because we're sales professionals. We've been doing it a long time. Would we probably hate it? Yes. If we had the option to quit, would we probably quit? Yes. So that's where efficiency plays a role in sales. But beyond that, the metrics for what makes a salesperson successful is a moving target. So case in point, and I've probably talked about this before, so if I have, tell me to be quiet. But when I was a young boy and I got my first sales job, I knew that if I made 100 phone calls, picked up the phone, dialed a 10-digit number, waited for someone to answer. Phone calls. If I made 100 phone calls in a day,
bless you,
I could set 2 to 3 new appointments. First-time appointments. So what I typically did is I blocked off Tuesdays and Thursdays on my calendar that I would just make 100 phone calls those 2 days. And then Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I would run first, second, and third appointments with prospective clients. And that was a formula. And I got really good at that formula. And I was typically one of the best salespeople in my office as a result of that. Now, if I tried to do that today, I would literally drive myself crazy. I could make 200 phone calls in a single day and probably not talk to one single person.
Why?
The metrics have changed. There's a number of reasons. People don't answer their phone anymore. They have caller ID and they have voicemail. And 9 times out of 10, the moment they hear that voice, go, I don't know that person. Right. They don't even bother listening. 9 times out of 10. So now you can catch lightning in a bottle from time to time. You can get lucky. But if you predicate your sales success on luck, you're going to run out really fast. So one of the challenges that you and I both face is, well, how do we get in front of this person? You know, one of the reasons we started this podcast is we wanted to get people that weren't necessarily interested in talking to us to at least hear us.
Yeah.
And go, wow, Alison's really smart. Mike's really smart. Maybe there's somebody that I want to talk to, because that all gets back to trust. And I know I've said this to you offline. My credo for LinkedIn is borrowing and leveraging trust. That's how you get people to pay attention to you that otherwise would not. And I know you've had this experience, but I can't tell you how many times somebody said to me, look, Mike, I don't normally take these meetings, but because Alison said I should talk to you, I'm going to talk to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all we need, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think what I'm hearing for me is like a blended approach. So like the metrics and a formula. I was talking to a new peer of mine yesterday for a long time about being consistent in prospecting. And so from a prospect's perspective, they hear from me once, never happened. Twice, if I'm following up once a week, sending information that's worth reading once a week, whatever, I start to become familiar. Maybe then they start to open what I'm sending. Then the phone call does register because, oh, Alison Haas, you painted my ass in my spam inbox. Yep, there's like 10 stacked high. Oh, I know who that is. But I'm building familiarity, and then they trust that I'm consistent, reliable, persistent, right? And so I'm building on the front end some rapport, even if they're not responding, just because I am consistent. My messaging is familiar. My name starts to get familiar. And so, yeah, I agree with that. And yes, the metrics have changed. And I just think referrals are great, right? I'm not in a place professionally yet where that's all I can rely on. It's wonderful when it happens, but back to Judy, that those small wins and developing those relationships so that I can get referrals, right? If it's just about you signing that paper today and then I don't care, nobody's going to do business with me. And then word spreads, right? So yeah, I think it's definitely a combo.
So I'll give my last thought today regarding a couple things you just said and tie it into a client meeting that I had yesterday. So I had a meeting yesterday with the COO of a company with 50 employees. And right in my wheelhouse, right in your wheelhouse, that's exactly the kind of company that I want to talk to. The COO happens to be the fraternity brother of my president.
Oh, fun.
And when the name first came up, I went through our president's LinkedIn profile. I found some people that I thought could be good prospective clients. And yesterday was the third try for us having a meeting. So he had agreed, knows our president very well, loves him to death. Absolutely, I'll meet with you. First meeting, train wreck. Things going on because he's a COO.
Yeah.
You can't anticipate when a fire is going to come up.
Yep.
Second meeting, completely whiffed. He was in the zone. He was working on something, just completely forgot about it. Third meeting, sticks. Mm-hmm. And we have this really powerful conversation with him. And we identify that, one, there is an opportunity for us to do something with him. It's probably somewhere towards the end of the third quarter this year, which you and I know. You don't close deals in a month or 2 months. Every now and then you do. You get lucky.
Yeah.
The contract that I was telling you about that I signed yesterday, that took about 5 weeks. We got lucky. We had a customer that had a pressing need, and the timing was right, and they appreciated how we go about our business. So we got the deal in about 5 weeks. Great. The majority of them don't happen that way.
Right.
So I bring this as a nice tie into Mike and Alison After Hours because we were talking about our website, and he said, your website doesn't really do a great job of aligning with the things you've told me today. And I said, yeah, we're working on that. We're going to actually update it in the coming months. I said, however, if you check out our YouTube channel, we have lots of great content on there. And he said, nope, I'm not a YouTube guy. He goes, but I see all of your posts on LinkedIn and your Mike and Alison podcast thing. Like, that's what he called it. He said, your Mike and Alison podcast thing. I see you doing that all the time. So great job. I said, it's working.
Yes. Yes.
Because the COO of a business that doesn't watch that stuff, at least peripherally saw Mike's creating this content.
Yeah.
And so that's a metric. So that's frustrating for sales professionals and for business owners to try and sort out, well, how the heck do I do this? So, Alison, your parting thoughts today. I thought today was a great show, as always. Thank you.
Yeah. No, likewise. I actually, somebody on Sunday I saw out in the world was like, oh, yeah, you do something for business, blah, blah, blah. And it's the podcast, right? Again, building the peripheral familiarity. We're out in the world. And I just so appreciate that because we do have to be creative today, right? I mean, the metrics have changed because the blueprint of work has changed. Remote, virtual, so many channels people have access to. They don't need us, right? They can go to Google. There's a lot of information on Google, right? Well, they do need us, but they don't know that. So, there's back to Judy and what we talked about, the human connection and being willing to invest the effort and have a longer lens view of whatever it is that you're building, be it the business, be it government contracts, be it sales, have a longer lens. And I think that's where having a community and a team around you helps because you have a buffer and you have some fellowship in your experience. So I'm going to stop talking because I could keep doing it. Thank you. I'm vocal today. You play.
Absolutely.
Me out early.
So for our viewing and listening audience, if you want to win the copy of Gloria's book that we're going to give away next month, it's really simple. All you have to do is like, comment, share on social media, tag myself or Alison so that we know you did, and you get an entry in, and you can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us on Amazon's Audible with the Amazon Alexa app, on iTunes, on iHeartRadio, on Spotify, on TuneIn, on Stitcher, on Podbean,
Everywhere.
wherever you like to do your podcast consumption. So for Alison Haas, I am Mike Shelah. Thank you for watching and listening to Mike and Alison After Hours. And remember, folks, people helping people, it's powerful stuff.
Thank you for joining Mike and Alison After Hours. Tune in next time for another great business owner sharing valuable industry ideas. Want to be a guest on our show? Contact us at answers@getadvantage.com.